Sheikh Shahin Anjum with us, a former mariner, and he has been working ashore for a long time now. And he has worked with various organizations from Maersk to GeoServe and now with Sofar Ocean. Since he has a very rich experience ashore, and that too after being a junior officer, so it's really important for all the fellow seafarers who are in their second officer, third officer ranks to get to know his journey and list out what all career possibilities we have. So welcome, Sheikh Anjum.
Thank you, Sachin. Excited to be here. Yeah, I mean that's a very valid point that you made.
Yeah.
Getting to know what are the do's and don'ts while
Yes.
you're sailing, and or also while you're coming back ashore and you're planning to
Yes.
ship. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's gonna be a good discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. So before anything starts, it's always goes back to why did you join Merchant Navy?
Long story short, I didn't want to become an engineer. Probably I didn't have the qualities to become an engineer. And I'm speaking about days like 2008, 2009, when everybody
Yeah.
was like, there was an influx of engineering in India. You got to
Yeah.
be an engineer or a doctor. So, the mind shifts away from there. And what's next? I found out this fine advertisement in newspaper, and I, started inquiring it. And yeah, I landed up in a pre-C institute.
Okay. So once your pre-C was done, you appeared for your exams. That's the general story of every seafarer's life. But then the biggest question always remains is, why did you look into transitioning ashore? Was this feeling always in your mind when you first joined your vessel? Or was this a feeling that gradually came up to you as you progressed through your different voyages?
I think every seafarer when they join on board, I mean, it's excitement. You never think of turning back, and you think that it's your office. When you look at the bridge in broad daylight or in the evening, you think that's the office. You do not belong to a 9 to 5. But eventually, yeah, it was there. Once I became a third mate, I had 2 3 contracts down the lane. I sort about what are the chances of getting back home and being with the family, and there are a lot of things that you miss out on. Like we all know, as seafarers, you miss out on a lot of
Yeah.
things when you're at sea. So yeah, that was always there in my mind. And yeah, that's how it started. The eventuality, the journey started to transition from ship to shore.
Okay. So then when you dwelled upon, transitioning ashore, then what were the possible career path which you chose out? Or when you decided, was it already there that you had a job role in front of you and you just went to it?
No, I didn't had any job role, and unlike those days, I quit sailing in 2016, end of 2016.
Yes.
Back in those days, social media or platforms like LinkedIn were there, but they were not that famous in terms of, now you have all these recruitment drives happening, or these agencies, consulting
Yeah.
agencies were coming up with a lot of job portals. That was not there in our times. I tried looking at various roles here in Calcutta itself because I'm born and brought up here. And the maritime industry is also very sparse here. And if you
Okay.
compare it with somewhere like a Mumbai,
Yeah.
it's not that great here. So
Yes.
eventually, I found out that Maersk Line had one of their offices here. I
Yeah.
googled it a bit, like
Yeah.
are there any shore jobs? And that's when I landed my first shore job. So it was very coincidental. It was nothing
Okay.
planned to that sort of.
Okay. Okay. So your first role, which I can see from your LinkedIn specifically, was from your a customer service executive, and then
Yeah.
you eventually changed over to customer success manager as well. So for anyone who does not know the difference between customer service and customer success, so could you please just define what is customer service and what is customer success?
Yeah. I mean, very short answer, but very long definition of both of them, or the differentiation would be
Yeah.
customer executive is somebody who would on a daily basis take up a lot of calls,
Okay.
sort of a telemarketing executive who you'll
Yeah.
sit behind a phone, and you'll have to take in calls from your customer. There is a fixed time
Yeah.
lapse on when you need to log in, when you need to log out.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is it. There's no operations involved. It's just customer oriented behavior. You got to have that in your mindset.
Okay.
One call resolution is what we used to say in most back our days. That when a
Okay.
customer calls you, you got to satisfy the customer's needs, whatever the issues or whatever problems they're facing. You got to end that in one call, and that's it. That was customer service executive part. Now, when it comes to customer success manager or customer success specialist, something of that sort, uh, I mean, I'm speaking very generally in terms of our marine industry. Customer success is something who would ideally bridge the gap between a customer and the product that the company has. So, for example, an XYZ customer sitting in any part of India or anywhere would call me up. Now, it's not like I'm just handling their calls. I'll also have to make sure that I align to their requirements. I listen them out properly and I align to the whatever issues they are having, and I bridge that with my product, whatever product I have. If I do not have, I'll try and relook at that with my product in that, hey, there's a scope that we have here, and and help the customer out. Obviously, you've got to be pinch perfect in communication with the customer. That comes from the customer success executive part.
Okay, so that is what it's a very good way of describing it. You highlighted in Maersk there was a customer success role. So what I can understand from is Maersk looks into shipping lines, but does Maersk have their own product for which customer success team is there, or how many what is the career path which a person can look once they start into customer success?
Honestly speaking, Maersk, being it's a brand, and I do not call Maersk as a company. It's a brand. You have everything. You have the ocean. So they have divided themselves into, like, for example, an ocean department they have. So who would only look after all their vessels and the vetting procedures and everything, and daily maintenance of the vessels. That's the ocean part. The other part is the logistics and service, which Maersk have their own terminals. They have their own containers. They have their own yards. So that is how you end up in that part also. So it's a mixture of both land and sea. And now Maersk has also gotten into air cargo. So Maersk Air is also another factor. So they are now three-dimensional brand. That is how it is. In terms of the product, I think Maersk had their own product. They still have. For example, they have their own vessels and they have their own containers. So XYZ customer who would want to export and import from point A to point B. Initially, Maersk would only take bookings for the sea cargo. They would use their vessels to move those cargoes. But eventually, I think after 2017-18 onwards, they also went ahead with their logistics and service, which we call LNS strategy. They also implemented that. So, like, if a customer's warehouse is somewhere in the hinterland, like, for example, landlocked area, like, for example, Delhi, you do not have any waterways to connect. And an air export would be JNPT or Hazira. So now they also bridge that gap in connecting via rail or road network. So that is how their product would work. Okay, so
Basically that's exactly their product. Then moving into customer success, just anyone who is looking to transition from a maritime career into a customer success role, be it just the maritime industry or outside maritime industry, what would be some good skills which you think a mariner should highlight in their CV, or should have inherently would inherently have it with them, which will make them a eligible candidate for a customer success role?
Yeah, it's a very tough question because the job is so cross-dimensional. The person would have to have a lot of other things apart from your basic shipping knowledge. Of course, shipping knowledge comes priority because you're working for a shipping domain. But I think other than that, you got to have the first part would be communication. How you relate to this corporate world, because it's a corporate world after all. It's not the seafarers world where you're on your own and you got to take the decision and you got to back it. Here is different. You got to work out with 10 different teams and you have to align everything, and then you got to make the product or the process. It's very difficult here, but I think the few points would be: first, communication. Second is, if you're joining an organization, make sure that you know in and about the company and the products that they have. If it's a vessel performance, for example, you got to know their product, or in general, what the market industry is all about. What are the products being used? And then you have voyage optimization, which is also a different genre. Again, deck officers primarily would be best suited for this role because we used to do that. All of us do that in and out every day in our daily routine and board ship. Yeah, and just before you join or you transition to shore, I would ask everyone to brush up their Excel, PowerPoint, Word skills, because
Yeah.
that's one very basic thing that people miss out on. And I think if you get time, I mean, you're trying to seamlessly switch over, transition. Also
Yeah.
look at getting some SQL, Python, or programming languages to your kitty. I think that helps a lot, because we are in a AI age where,
Yeah.
people would love you and me to do things very
Yeah.
quickly and in a very organized manner. So I think all these things help.
Yeah. So I can totally agree with it that having certain skills and communication is one of the most important aspects one must focus on when they are coming ashore, because here it is very important for you to communicate the right thing with the stakeholders who you are dealing with. Having said that, one thing which always comes out is how can one improve their communication skills, especially while they are on board, because it is very isolating at times, and the people who you talk to are generally your family members. So how can one staying on board enhance their communication skills, which can be make it very easy for them to smoothly transition ashore and not have to learn the hard way, which all the seafarers do generally.
Yeah, I mean, yes, very, very valid point. You're on board, and you're all on your own.
Yeah.
You got to look after yourself, do your duties properly, and then the only people probably you're speaking to are your colleagues on board or your family members. I
Yes.
think one skill that I have done personally on board is, reading a lot of stuffs on board. And by
Okay.
reading I mean, if you're aligning towards the maritime shore industry,
Yeah.
you should look at things like what is happening in that
Okay.
part of the world. For example,
Okay.
again, I go back to the very basics, like these known reporting forms that we use on board.
Yeah.
These are devised and these are updated regularly. You can't
Yes.
keep them old
Correct.
for a very
Yeah.
long time. So it stuck to me when I was on board. Like, how do these guys program this? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just software after all. So
Yes.
there must be somebody who is sitting and who is doing putting this hard work to make sure that we are just filling up the details and sending it one click, and boom, it went to the operator or the shore people. So you start. Any person who would want to transition, I would say, try and see what are the options, what best suits you, and
Yeah.
then try and read a lot of things online. The industry nowadays is very volatile, and plus, when you're on board, you should be having a lot of time when you can read through stuffs, and yeah, I think gradually, and speak to the right people, of course.
Yeah.
Speak to people whom you want to. I wouldn't say follow, but
Yeah.
you like somebody's trajectory, how they've progressed in their career. Once
Yes.
in a while, have a conversation with them over LinkedIn. I mean, if somebody reaches out to me, I'm not that rude that
Yeah.
I won't, absolutely speak to that person. I'll always, hi, hello, how are you, and what are you doing? Somebody asks me a question, I would be polite enough to answer that. Yeah, this is how it is. And yeah, I
Yes.
think these are the very basic things to start off, and then gradually, eventually, you can move forward.
Yes, very well said. And I can definitely put this on record that yes, you answer people on LinkedIn. It's very important to connect over LinkedIn. And this is where over LinkedIn we met, and you were kind enough to do this podcast as well. But moving on from there, so can you tell some challenges which generally occur when you are transitioning a show, especially as a junior officer? Because there is always one reluctance with junior officers when they want to transition a show, especially in India, because here there is no set pathway which you can look at, this person had done this, so they can climb up the corporate ladder, or uh, go higher up ashore, especially because in India majority of the senior management roles are taken up by master mariners or chief engineers, which is slowly changing, but very slowly changing, especially in the segment it is changing, but in the general aspect of the shipping jobs, it's still that it's taken by senior officers. So how can one strongly put themselves in such a domain? And I'm sure you would also had this in your mind when you were thinking of transitioning. So how did you overcome this? And what are some tips which you would like to give to the other seafarers who are thinking about moving ashore right now?
Yeah, I think very valid point, and I would have eventually come to that point where it's you can decide everything, you can think about 100 things, you
Yeah.
can speak to a lot of people
Yes.
while you're on board, or while you're in your vacation time. The biggest reluctance that people in India have while switching back to a shore job, and I'm just speaking from my experience over LinkedIn, is the first thing, and it's a no-brainer, and it's a no-go area that you should be thinking is salary. The first thing that I hear when people try and switch is the first thing that they ask is, I'm getting this much on board. How would the package look like in India in
Yeah.
so and so company? I want to join this company. There's so and so role. Well, I would strongly, and I can put it on paper, do not see the initial part of, like, do not start off your career seeing, oh, this is really less than what I'm getting on board. It's a completely different world. You got to come here. There are probably 100 employees in a team
Yeah.
working seamlessly, well coordinated. On board ship, you're all on your own. Your decisions
Yes.
it's not like a ship would have 10 captains. There would only be
Yes.
one master, and
Yeah.
eventually you're away from your own, from your home. You're all on your own. So salaries, I mean, that's the first comparison that I always tell people to
Yeah.
avoid. Second thing is, when you're transitioning from a ship to shore, do not think of hitting a jackpot in the very
Yeah.
first part in terms of roles. And
Yes.
I have personally done that. Many of my fellow seafarers who have joined my previous companies or current companies, I've always
Yeah.
told them that you come here and you've got to have the right mindset. It's a very vast world. It's just like the ocean. If you're on board a vessel, the way you see the ocean, I always tell my people, close friends, that the shore part of maritime industry is also similar to that. There are n number of opportunities that you can have. You just got to bide your time. You got to take
Yeah.
all those experiences in. Whatever experience you have on board, speak to the right people and get knowledgeable. And I think that is one part that you should always be looking at while you're
Okay.
transitioning. And these are all the points which might work negatively when you're trying to come on a show. You might think like, oh, I'll be sitting in beside behind a captain, and when he was also there on board ship, I also had a captain, something like that. Is he gonna
Yeah.
be like this here in the corporate world also? No, it's not the case here. You're answerable to everyone here. So
Yeah.
it's a very seamless thing here in the corporate world. You just got to have the enthusiasm to learn every day,
Okay.
and that's, I think, it will go a long way.
Yeah. Okay. That's really well put up. And then from your journey, you had few years with customer success. I think you became customer success manager as well. Then why did you decide to, change over to a vessel performance segment? Why, and that too, starting from a vessel performance analyst? Was this something you were very excited about, or this interested you, or what was the mindset behind, again changing your role entirely to a different segment now?
Yeah, yeah. So I will tell you one small story. I was in the so first I was completely into the logistics part.
Okay.
Uh, I moved up the ladder, but then I would very quickly I understood that logistics is one part which is completely different. I've
Yes.
done my schooling, I've done my college in the maritime domain. Now,
Yeah.
I always had the urge to get back somewhere. I didn't want to get on board a vessel again, but then I
Yeah.
thought maybe if I get an opportunity to, put my learnings into use, that would be the
Yeah.
maritime domain. And
Okay.
again, maybe I did not do a lot of research. Probably I would have had some other roles, but this
Yes.
was one role. And I always believe that you should, when you're changing over, that is what I believe, you should start
Yes.
from the scratch.
Yes.
Gradually start learning the very basics of the maritime domain. And then eventually there will come a point that you will probably end up going more higher and learning a lot of new things and getting a lot of responsibility. So that is how my thinking was. I never thought about, like, I'm getting going from a complete managerial position to an analyst position, but that analyst
Yeah.
position has actually helped me in learning the
Okay.
grassroots of the vessel performance.
So, for anyone who does not know what vessel performance is and what voyage optimization is, because people who are looking to transition ashore, they think that vessel performance and voyage optimization is the same thing. So, what is vessel performance and what is voyage optimization?
Yeah. Very, very genuine question. I get to hear this as well. Very short answer. Vessel
Okay.
performance is something with regard to the speed and consumption of the vessel. And it's a, so I'll the very first difference between voyage optimization and vessel performance is, one is a reactive product, one is a
Yes.
proactive product. Now, why I'm
Yes.
comparing is because voyage optimization is something which we are actively looking out for a vessel's voyage
Yes.
beforehand. For example, in
Yes.
5 days' time, whatever is going to happen, I will proactively do the analysis, the weather analysis, and I will let the vessel or the operator know how the weather is in the near
Yes.
5 to 10 days. So this
Correct.
being a proactive part. And
Yes.
vessel performance is entirely reactive because we get all these known report data, we
Yeah.
assess these data, and then eventually, probably in a quarter time, or what we normally used to do was 45 to 60 days, we used to send out
Yeah.
all these health checkup reports, as we used to say.
Okay.
So
Okay.
basically, these are once the voyage is completed, and
Hmm.
you then assume the data that has coming in from the vessel, you compare it with the vessel's module, and you get
Yeah.
to understand what is happening with the vessel. Is she consuming more? Is she consuming
Yeah.
less? Or is she able to make that speed? Not able to make that speed? And now all this analysis goes into the experience
Yeah.
factor. So I think
Okay.
this is broadly the difference between.
Okay. So let's just walk through the day of a vessel, not vessel, but vessel performance analyst now. How would generally a day in the life of a vessel performance analyst with a general good company, which like you work for, would look like, especially in a city like Mumbai?
So basically, if you say from a very standing point, a day in a life would be I go in, I log in, and I see these X number of known reports
Yeah.
coming from the vessel. I will
Yeah.
now then tally these known reports with the data that I have, the vessel specific data. For example, we used to use the main engine shock test, the sea trials
Okay.
data. These are the two
Yeah.
broadly used methods that we used to align with the known report. And then you
Yes.
got to see how the report is looking like. All of
Yes.
a sudden, if there's a spike or there's
Yeah.
something which is not normal, you got to
Yeah.
report that to the vessel, or you got to
Okay.
at least have an explanation. Why
Okay.
is this thing abnormal? So this,
Okay.
I think, this used to be our daily task.
Okay.
Apart from this, every semester we used to had a speed and consumption. What do I say? A speed and consumption table coming up for each vessel,
Yeah.
and then you got to make a formal
Yeah.
report and let the superintendents know that this is how your
Okay.
vessel is doing, has been doing for the last 6 months. This is what we recommend to the vessel. If,
Okay.
for example, in the same weather, I can see two sister vessels are doing the similar route, and one of them is consuming less, one is consuming more. Now, I by default would know that that vessel which is consuming more is having some issues either with the engine or with the hull machinery part. This is how it would go.
Yes. So moving from there, one very genuine question which everyone would think of is vessel performance generally involves a lot of reportings which are generally dealt by marine engineers. And you being a deck officer, how did you manage to, crack into it? Because it's very difficult to get into vessel performance being a deck officer. So how did you crack it into it? And then how did you succeed into it later on?
Yeah. So uh, the team that I had joined in my previous organization, that
Yeah.
it was a newly formed team. The team was being
Okay.
formed. Now,
Okay.
specifically, that team needed a few marine engineers and a few deck
Okay.
officers because
Okay.
from the technical point of view, you need engineers who are
Yes.
thorough with the engines and with all these fuel and speed colors. Being a deck officer, I was more inclined towards the commercial part.
Yes.
So, in order to have a team of vessel performance, you need both the sides of the coin. You need
Okay.
the commercial aspect also. I would also, engineers would normally think about how the engine or the propulsion
Yeah.
machineries are happening.
Correct.
I would also think additional to that, I'll also think that part, but in my mind would also come another part, which is what is her hire rate? What is she doing?
Yeah.
Is she able to, go, not consuming more or not consuming
Yeah.
less? Is she on a delay? Is
Yeah.
she doing well? So that was one part that I was very engrossed with in the
Yes.
vessel performance module, probably which is why in my interview I got selected because I was able to clarify those things
Yeah.
coming in from a customer success background. So I was
Yes.
more looked into a person who would also speak to a lot of clients and
Yes.
have a healthy relationship with the clients. And
Yes.
yeah, that is how it was.
Yes. So, being a vessel performance analyst, I can understand you get multiple ships, maybe depending on the size of your organization specifically. It may be 5 ships under you, maybe 10, or maybe an entire client's portfolio of 50 to 60 vessels, or maybe if you are a very senior analyst, it might go up to 100 ships, depending on your experience and the size of the organization. But then moving from here, what are the future career enhancements which one can see in a vessel performance segment? Let's say, what other after vessel performance analyst, what can you become, and up till where one can reach, having all the relevant knowledge and experience with them, and you continuously upskill yourself, especially being a junior officer.
Yeah. I think vessel performance analysis is just the stepping stone.
Yes,
Once you're through and through with this report part, so it initially it will be a more of a clerical part. You got
yes,
to,
yes,
deal with a lot of data.
yeah,
The moment you understand how to deal with a lot of bulk data together is when you'll truly try and upskill yourself in terms of,
correct.
then comes the part of claims. So you
Yes,
have all these reports coming in on a daily
yes,
basis and you have a track of how a vessel is doing. Now
correct.
you know exactly, you and me will both know exactly how that vessel is supposed to do against what
Yes,
she has actually done. Now,
yes,
if you're working for a client who is a who is a owner, or you're working for a client who's a charterer, so
yes,
both ways now you know if you have a claim to defend or if you have a claim to put forward. So that is
yes,
another progression that you have in vessel
yes,
performance. Well, if you know the basics, then comes the claims part. Claims
yes,
part is also very exciting, and I've been part of a lot of claims that I have received or I've defended or I've also put forward to the owners.
okay,
It's a fascinating world. But then again, I would always state this for any role. You got to study continuously. You got
yes,
to study and make up for those, time that you're not doing all these things.
yes,
You are sailing, which is okay. But the moment you come ashore, you got to study a lot of things because, shipping is, I mean, from specifically from a sailor's point, you're sailing, you know what exactly are the things that you need to run a ship from point A to
yeah,
point B. Now, what
yes,
goes behind? How is the ship drawing that cargo?
yeah,
Versus how is the higher rate going to be fixed? What are the demurrage
yes,
time? What are the lay time? That is a whole different world altogether. That is one
yes,
part that one can obviously upskill yourself, and you can come up with that ladder. Also, newly formed these emission norms which are coming in
yes,
are also now having a lot of effect on vessel performance, which
yes,
is why emissions is also a portfolio which is in very big demand nowadays. So I would
okay.
again, with emissions, it is more theoretical. You got to have a lot more in-depth knowledge, which eventually a person can have while you're starting off from a performance point.
Okay. So it's very like what I can see is that as shipping industry is more digitizing, more and more roles are going to come in, especially where they will require a lot of junior officers. And it is a very right time for anyone to who is thinking of transitioning ashore to step into this world, gain some experience and move up and continuously upskill yourself and opportunities will come up to you. Then when we are on board, we generally deal with one ship's data. And especially as a second officer, you are or even some third officers who take interest in reports, they get to know about the reports, how things are working. But here, Ashore, you have so many multiple reports. So, what can be one thing which you can start learning on board, which will help you to smoothly transition into such kind of performance-based roles?
I think from a point of view of being on board and getting to know what is happening,
Yes,
I think the best part would be to look at the noon reports, the daily noon checks that you're getting from the chief engineer's cabin. How are you drawing those conclusions as to how much fuel you're burning per day for the last
yes,
24 hours, or how much bunker is remaining? I mean, that's the very basis of a vessel performance. If
yes,
somebody takes a bit more, interest in that, and you then look out for documents saying that, "Oh, my vessel has consumed 30 metric tons in the
yes,
last 24 hours." How would I know what the baseline would be for this speed? Now,
yes,
being an officer, you know what vessel has made in the last 24 hours, how much distance, and that would give you the speed, obviously.
yes,
So, and if you're on a charterer run, there's a fixed speed that you need to maintain for from point A to point B. Now, if
yes,
you take a bit more interest, I'm just giving an example on this. If you take a bit more interest on this and you then decide to, speak to some engineers colleague that you
yes,
have
yeah,
down below in the engine room, and you sort of ask them like, hey, are we complying enough? Just general discussions. You can get to understand that how are they also dealing with the bunker part, and that is where I think speed and everything is you can determine being on the bridge. The other part, which is your bunker section, the fuel changeover, you have a lot of grades nowadays. You have
yes.
biofuels. So I think the best part to start is right from the vessel itself.
Yes, because I think it's very important to start communicating with your fellow colleagues on board about what is happening on board because we only tend to focus on one side of the picture that this is just my job, I'll just focus on this. And if From my experience, whenever gone to an engineer to ask even a small thing, they get very happy and they tell you a lot of extra details, which will help you out eventually in some or the other way. Having said that, so after vessel performance, now you move to Sofar Ocean, with and you are a routing specialist over here. Different organization, different role, but is the work which you are doing same or is it entirely different?
Again, like the first point that I said, this is a completely different genre.
Yes.
Yes, there are similarities here and there, but this is much more detailed in terms of void specific. Now I
Okay.
am dealing with things like which are beyond my control. I have to deal with
Okay.
weather. I have to
Yeah.
deal with all these adverse scenarios which I was not dealing while I was in
Yeah.
vessel performance domain. So
Yes.
this is completely different, but also very exciting because I personally, I then get to understand and I remind myself of all those good old glory days when I was on board and I was doing my own watch and looking out of the windows and I was like, oh, it's calm sea.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do a lot more speed and something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a complete different genre. But having said that, there's still quite a few similarities in terms of vessel performance and voyage optimization.
Yes. So, as you rightly mentioned, when you were on board, you think about a lot of things, a lot of data which comes from your charter or from your owner's side that, this is our weather provider. This is the route which he has given to us. Please follow this. Let us try to make a mariner who is on board understand what is the importance of this plan which comes from ashore and what kind of tools do we have ashore to assess this situation and give them a plan, because generally when you are on board what you think is people ashore they don't have anything, they just give us routes and it's I'll do what I want. So how, yeah, so if we can touch upon that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I keep thinking of all those times when I used to think like, hey, why is this so and so XYZ Western is texting us or emailing the captain
Yes.
as to like, oh, captain, please maintain this speed and take this diversion as has been mentioned by the voyage optimization team. I now can rightfully think and I'm now on the other side of it. So I want to make one thing very clear to all of you watching here. The very first part is we as weather routing provider would normally take one thing for granted, which is a vessel is provided a route, a vessel would have a master, and that we are nowhere close to a captain's knowledge
Okay.
in terms of knowledge wise. So we respect that. Now our job is very simple. It's very detailed, but it's very simple. As in, we know what is happening. We have real time weather data. We have historical weather data. Combining both of them with a state of art weather infrastructure, we now have access. So, like when I joined Sofar, we had about 10 days advance weather to see.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, we have progressed that, and we now have a good window of 15 days. But I as a seafarer would never take a 15 days window, as in
Yeah.
very confirmatory. I would always stick to a 5 to 7 days. So 5 to 7 days
Yes.
would be very accurate. So
Okay.
my job is not to nullify what the master or second bat has given. My
Okay.
job is to obviously take that route, overlay the weather factors, and then determine the best route, which would have number one, not a lot of deviation because we
Yes.
trust a captain's route. We do not
Yes.
want a lot of deviation. We obviously do not want a route which would have savings but end up having a lot more distance at it. So these
Yeah.
are two of the things, and there are n number of things also we took and take into account. But the very first thing is we are not here to, how do I say? We're not here to oppose what the
Yeah.
master or the vessel is giving us. We are
Yeah.
here to help them. And I can vouch for everyone in this industry that we have ashore. People
Yeah.
try to help vessels so that they have, because we also are under pressure from the owners and charterers that you have to
Yeah.
give us the best route, which would have savings. And
Yeah.
also, it has to be safe for the crew and the ship and the
Yes.
cargo. So we try
Yes.
doing that to the best of our abilities.
Yes. Having said that, there are new technologies which are coming in where even the vessel model is being created ashore to see how it is going to react to different kind of weathers and what can be best done. So can you just, if you have some knowledge about that, not just knowledge, but if you have some had some experience with this and you can just share if there is some too.
Yeah, I mean, so when I was joining, I thought like, oh, we just need the vessel details, for example,
Yes.
the draft and
Yeah.
displacement. And yeah, we are good to go. We would
Yeah.
get a route from the vessel and we would eventually plan out a safe passage for the vessel.
Yeah.
When I came on board, I understood here in Sofar that there are so many parameters that we ask the
Yeah.
vessel. Uh, for example, we need their metacentric eye,
Yeah.
we need their roll period, we need their, of course, the draft and displacement, and this is very common. But basis that, there is a model, of course, rightly you mentioned, there is a model which is created. You got to input the values, and that model would, I would say, 95% of the times would eventually give out a very good route. 5% is always,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
always take that in a plus or
Yeah.
plus or minus 5%. But assuming everything goes well, I think 95% of the times I have seen that they overlay the route, which is absolutely perfect. And there has been incremental savings for a lot of our customers in here in Sofar Ocean.
So, having said that, so we touched upon customer success, we touched upon vessel performance. Now we are into voyage optimization. And what kind of skill sets and knowledge will a person who is looking to build his career in voyage optimization domain specifically would require?
I think the very basic part of voyage optimization is getting to know the weather analysis that we used to do on board as well. You get a
Yes.
report from NAPTEX stating
Yes.
that so and so weather, there's a heavy weather somewhere, there's
Yes.
tropical depression happening, tropical storm is happening. You got to also have a little bit of more knowledge on the nav area warnings that we used to get on board. Like for example, there's a what do you say, mine clearance activity, mine
Yes.
sweeping activity happening or
Yes.
something like that. These are paramount importance because when we are devising a route for a vessel, keep clear of all these no-go zones. We keep clear of all these warning zones that are there on the chart. And of
Yes.
course, you're not specifically dragging a vessel into, for example, Argo Strait or somewhere like that, which is now
Yes.
the Red Sea is
Yeah.
absolutely stopped for service for most of the companies. Their owners do not want their vessels to ply even a little near the Somalia coast. So, for example,
Yeah.
there's, I cannot name you the client, but there's a client which you have on board, and their restriction is you got to stick 600 nautical miles away from the Somalia coast. Now, imagine in that whole of Arabian Sea, if you have to stick
Yes.
600 miles away, there is very little room left in the Arabian Sea in total.
Yes.
And for example, if there is a depression, because even before pre-monsoon, when we had
Yeah.
the pre-monsoonal winds and the waves coming
Yeah.
in, it was very difficult for us to manage. But yeah, we
Yeah.
tried doing that to the best of our ability. So I think the very first part is weather.
Yes.
Second part is again go back to very basics of pre-sea and start studying the tropical revolving storms. How
And Captain
this thing
Subramaniam's
happens.
book.
Yes, yes, careful. Captain Subramaniam book. If somebody is following, if you're not following, if you're
Yeah.
trying to come into the voice optimization domain, please study that. I think 90% of your doubts would be solved and you would be able to absolutely do the work.
Yeah, that's very well because I have many friends who have started to work in vessel performance as well and voyage optimization as well. And from them, I can see that one question which already generally people will have is, okay, I start my career ashore, be it customer success, be it vessel performance or voyage optimization. How high can I reach? Because they always feel that there's always going to be that, insecurity that I don't have managerial rank experience on board. So how would you tackle such kind of a question to someone who is coming up to you saying, I don't think of transitioning ashore because there is a cap to what I can reach when I'm moving ashore.
Yeah, I mean, they are partly correct because
Okay.
when you're on board, all you see is the master and the chief engineer being the
Yeah.
command in their
Yes.
respective domain.
Yes.
The moment you think about shore job, you think like, hey, you're gonna have eventually a master and a chief engineer setting. You're not going to go beyond them. But contrary to that, I would tell you a lot of my colleagues have become
Yeah.
customer success manager, and I don't think that rank is very important here. Again, I start from a very basic point. I've
Yeah.
seen my people around me who have started from an analyst position, went to a senior analyst, then become an assistant manager, and somehow now they're in their respective genres and customer success manager or a team lead. It's, it, I mean, rank is there. It's good if somebody can go up to a master's level. That would take a lot of time, but eventually, the moment they shift ashore, it would be much more easier in terms of rank. But if
Yeah.
somebody is coming in for example, a fourth engineer, third officer. I think you're going to start from the basic, and eventually you will be there. There's no point of thinking like that. And because the market is so upside now, you have a lot of influx of opportunities happening. I think
Yeah.
this is the 2025 has been an amazing year for
Yeah.
people who have been
Yeah.
transitioning to shore.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think if somebody is thinking, now is
Yeah.
the point. You got to start right away.
Yeah. Because there are a lot of opportunities which are coming in, especially with all the regulations which are there. People require people ashore to have certain maritime subject matter expertise, which a non mariner would not have. And that is where people with the right skill sets at the right time, at the right place, if they just knock on the door, you will land up a good opportunity. And from what I can see, is that many people, they are even getting up to, even if there was third officers or second officers, they are going to up to head of operations or but it depends on what kind of caliber you have, because I think ashore it's a very pyramidal structure, whereas on board it's a very pipeline based structure where you enter at as a cadet, then you will generally come out as a master mariner, or as a, if you entered as a junior engineer, then as a chief engineer, unless your pipeline had some holes and you deviated out and got out early, like us. But then ashore it's very pyramidal. At the bottom there are many people. As you start going up, you need to add more value, and the more value you add, I think the more chances of you reaching higher are going to be there. So it's, but I believe that, so following up on this, how well do you think it is to upskill in terms of, a traditional degree? What kind of other specialization skills or courses they can do? Because you have also done a postgraduate diploma. So what advice would you give to someone who is looking to get a higher education, especially when they are working ashore?
Yeah, I think very good question because I still remember back in 2019, I just had my BSc in nautical science degree with me. And
Yes.
if you go away from the maritime industry and you show it to
Yeah.
someone, they would
Yes.
be just throwing it away. They would be like,
Yes.
"What is this degree? What have you
Yeah.
done to yourself? I
Yeah.
mean, what do you even do with this degree? What did you
Yeah.
study?" So I had all these questions coming to me,
Yes.
and eventually I thought like, no, I got to have something which would make sense in a corporate world. I mean, it's not necessary that you got to have a degree, but
Yeah.
it's a very helpful tool for you. It would be a very helpful tool for you if you're trying to climb up that ladder and
Right.
eventually, try and get into a managerial sort of a position. I did my PGDM because I never wanted to do a full-time MBA. I was
Okay.
working with Merck, uh, and one of my colleagues, he told me that why don't you try this? There's something called Narsi Munji, and I said,
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard of them. They're a big organization institute in India. So I researched a bit and eventually, and I was working in the logistics sector then, so
Yes.
I like, yeah, international trade would be a good thing to start off with. So
Yes.
I did that. It was totally from home. I never visited their institute, except when I had the convocation done. I went by myself, and they were like, "Yeah, you have an option. You can probably dress up and stitch up. I mean, click a photo and give it to us. We will." So I was like, "No, I want to be there, and I want to
Yeah.
have that feeling of convocation. Throw my cap up like this." So yeah, that was a good moment. But I think other than that, more from this, what I would tell people to, because I personally happened with this when I was in MERS, I did
Yeah.
so you have all these platforms like Udemy
Yep.
and there's platforms like Coursera, where you
Right.
have a lot of these specific industry specific courses that you can take
Yes.
up. And these do not cost a lot. These are very, very cheap and very effective because you can complete them in a day's time and you get a proper certificate probably from an IBM or a Google. And that has worked in my favor. I've done a lot of those certifications. In fact, when the AI module first came and we were all hearing like AI is the go-to thing. You got to upskill yourself now. So me and my colleague again, we went back to the drawing board. We were like, oh man, we just did a customer success manager's course, how to reduce churn and so on. And so on. We're
Yeah.
again back to square one. So he's like, yeah, let's just research a bit and find out what this AI thing is all about. And then we did that as well. And I mean, if like, I have never been in a sales domain, but I
Yes.
like that part as well. I
Yes.
like speaking to a lot of customers and getting to know what exactly is happening with their business and how I can support them. So that was one specific course which I just did I think a couple of months back, and it was out of nowhere. I just searched on Udemy, sales management tutorial, and there came a sales course, and I did it, and I showed it to my boss, and he's like, "Oh, do you not want to go back to sales, or what are you even thinking?" I said, "No, no, no, I'm not thinking anything. I'm just trying to learn. That's it. Maybe if I'm of any help to somebody in my organization,
Yes.
I'm absolutely ready to help. There's no question that." So I think I would focus more on these
Yeah.
short courses. I think that adds a lot more value. Of course, if a person can do an MBA or a PGDM or an executive MBA, that's very good, but that takes up a lot of time and a lot of money as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Because very well said. Because all these courses, they can range from a week's time to a day's time to even a month. But the best part is that when you are learning, you can apply it to your job directly. You can start connecting the dots, because when you're coming from a maritime industry where you're just navigating the ships, or just going up and down in the engine room and managing all the machinery, it gets very difficult to understand the lingo of what people are saying ashore and how things are operating ashore. So I think these small courses will really help you to bridge the gaps which you have, which a traditional mariner might lack somewhere. Because we have the skills, we have the mindset of continuously evolving. Be it the STCW's courses coming in, where you have to just go to another institute, get your certificates validated, sit in a classroom. So we have that in us already. So why not build up on that habit and continue learning?
I would also want to add
Yeah,
up
yeah,
one point. When in the very
yeah.
initial part, you had asked me, how do make yourself adapt to the communication part?
Yes,
These are
yes,
also platforms where you can take up a lot of courses like speaking English course or something like that,
yeah,
or like how do you speak to even a customer,
yeah,
something like that. If you just Google
yes,
it randomly, there would be n number of courses, and they would range from I think 500 rupees to about
yeah,
2,000 rupees. You can
yeah,
eventually do them in a day's
yeah,
time, and you can,
yeah.
and trust me, if somebody's doing them properly, they would learn quite a few things from them, because these courses are tailor made to those situations which you really
Yes,
want to tackle.
yes. Because at the end of the day, even an MBA is a collaboration of multiple short courses. If you see, honestly, it's it's multiple courses added up to formally acknowledge that you have these done courses in this section, and now you can manage a business, or you have the understanding of a business. That is what MBA does. So similarly, if you just club in your interests and start looking out, would you? This is where I don't understand things. Just let's go and find what courses are available. And especially with Coursera, I think they have a subscription package of year or monthly basis services, where you just pay some amount and you can do number of courses. There's no limit to how much you can learn in today's market. Having said that, if we move forward, so if someone at today's day and age is looking to transition ashore, what all steps should they start taking? From how and where should they research about the kind of jobs? Because the one biggest issue is not being able to find what kind of jobs I can get into. Then how do they find about the jobs which, like, okay, I found there is something called voyage optimization. So how do I find these voyage optimization jobs? How do I find these customer success jobs? Where can I go? And then the next question comes is, how do I make my CV for these kind of jobs? Because many mariners, what they do is they open their CDC, they open their STCW certificates, and they just start typing there, I've done this from this date to this date I was on board this ship, and from this date to this date I was on board this ship, I have done these many STCW courses, and now I want to move ashore. But so what would be the ideal plan for someone looking to transition ashore?
The first part, Sachin, I would be asking people is try to see what is happening on board. So you got to connect the dots. You got to
Yeah,
understand if you're getting an email from like how I did. I would just simply put across to you, I used to see this vessel operator every day mailing my captain, "Hey,
yeah,
this is what it is. You need to run your ship at this
yeah,
speed, this course." So I was like, "What does this vessel operator even do? Why is he sitting in an office directing us when we are the ones who should be,
yeah,
managing our own vessels?" So
yeah,
and this actually happened. I looked up on Google, what does a vessel operator do? So I got a reply from, I got quite a few links, and I then one of them clicked one of those links, and I found out a profile. Oh, this is what exactly that person is doing. So basically, he's managing the PL, which is the profit and loss part of a
yeah,
vessel with regards to voyages, with regards to cargo, with regards to lay time, with regards to a lot of other bunkering as well. So I then had a small brief. Oh, this is one part which I can eventually get into. Now, how do I get into those? Is eventually studying all those things. Now, how do you study is absolutely on that person, because again, the whole part comes to your interest. If that person
Yeah.
is interested enough, he or she would definitely find a way to make sure that you are joining the dots. The other part, so this is on board. The other part is if you have just come back from your contract, you're sitting at home, just open LinkedIn and create a profile. It's a very basic part thing to
Okay.
do. Just create a profile and try searching random names, role names on LinkedIn. For example, if you are into voice optimization, just type voice optimization and see what comes up. This is a very basic thing that I'm going, as cliche as I can be, but you can start typing all these things, and eventually there's an algorithm fit into LinkedIn. So eventually, if you try doing that for a couple of days, LinkedIn by default would start showing you
Yeah.
all those algorithm based posts, algorithm based
Yeah.
jobs. I think that's
Yes.
very basic thing to start off. And then, of course, if you know a few companies already, or you know people who are already working somewhere ashore, try connecting with them, try reaching out to them. I think if you reach out to 10 people, I'm for sure 4 or 5 would eventually reply back to you. So, and even if one person would reply back to you, you start having a conversation with them. I think you can have a lot of idea from that person. So I think these are broadly two of the steps that the person should start.
And moving on to what LinkedIn is. So it is the tool to be used to find a job or to move ashore and build connections. So how can someone create their LinkedIn, in a better way, make it more professional, not just to look, many people just create a LinkedIn and forget it. How to stay relevant on LinkedIn, what kind of posts they must do, or how to not just stand out, but how to, become, be seen in the industry, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, and what kind of people to connect to, because people will start connecting with their batchmates and everyone, or they'll start using it as Facebook, where they were connecting with anyone and everyone. So it is also important. So if you can just tell what kind of people to connect with and how to enhance your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, I think the very basic part would be you create a profile that should be aesthetic. By aesthetic, I mean just randomly when you created the very basic part of a profile, if you know already somebody in LinkedIn who you have been hearing or you have been seeing, just try visiting random profiles to see what exactly a profile should look like. If you
Okay.
if that person still does not have an idea, you can just go into YouTube, and I am again being as cliche, you can go to YouTube and there are n number of videos that you can see as to how do you create a good profile.
Yeah.
Now with profile, I do not mean that you got to have all your C details exactly. I've done this vessel, this is what I've done. That's fine. If you somebody wants to transition ashore, what I would really want that person to do is, first of all, when you're having your name, just below that there's a tagline where you can put in your very broad things, like I put in customer success, voyage optimization. Just put in all those relevant details that matter to you, or at least for a role that you're looking into.
Yeah.
And the next step would be, if you're writing your day biodata, it should not be a one huge essay. Just try and maintain a very short, sleek, and very concise. Like somebody reading it for half a minute would eventually know everything about you. Like, oh, this person has been doing this and this. That's it. Do not write, I have started studying like this. I've done my pre-C here. I've done now that doesn't happen here in LinkedIn. You got to be very concise. And then again, when you're going to your experiences, try mentioning them with one liners. Do not just keep it as deck cadet, third officer, second officer. Just make a
Correct.
brief about a line or two. It doesn't harm anyone. Not neither does it take a lot of time. You can just write in a couple of sentences, and that's it. That is how your basic profile is gonna be created. And then start the very most important part in LinkedIn is start making connections. By connection, I mean if you're trying for a specific role or a specific industry inside maritime domain, for example, vessel performance or even vessel optimization. There's also emissions, there is voyage optimization. For example, what happened to me when I was in vessel performance, or when I was in the logistics part, was I tried, when I heard voyage optimization and vessel performance, I tried searching it all over internet, all over LinkedIn. And I searched everything in LinkedIn when I wanted to get into vessel performance as to what exactly is this role all about. And I found a few connections who were kind enough to let me know. And they're very close to my heart because I still have all those people connected with me. And we, once in a week, we all catch up in Mumbai and we share our stories together. And it's a very big community, which is LinkedIn. And I think, I treat LinkedIn as a Bible. I mean, you can absolutely get whatever you want in LinkedIn. Uh,
Yeah.
be it your competitors or anything, you can absolutely learn from anybody in LinkedIn. So highlighting the best communication with the best people is of paramount importance.
Yeah, yeah. Very well said. Very well said. Because I think LinkedIn is a platform where, as you rightly said, you can see what kind of roles you want to get into, meet with those people, and gather their feedback on how can I go about this role in the current market scenario. And they will, and most people are kind enough to reply back to you, especially all the mariners. They are very kind enough to support other mariners who are looking to transition ashore. And after doing spending it's almost a decade since coming ashore for you now, almost a decade now, if we can say that. What would be some mistakes which you feel could have avoided to better enhance your career ashore, and you would advise other people to I made this mistake, avoid this.
Yeah. I think very early on, I still remember I had created a LinkedIn profile back in 2014 and I
Okay.
never used it till 2018. I never used it. And I still remember, like, if I would have used it to my knowledge, I think I would have been, I wouldn't say successful, but then I would have been in a completely different genre by now. Because the moment I started connecting over LinkedIn, I could find out that, you know, there are a lot of people who you can take help from. So that is one part, first part that I missed out on in my opportunity. The second thing is I connected to the maritime domain a lot I mean, what to say, a lot backward in terms of that the maritime community was there all over LinkedIn. I got to connect with them after COVID. So I was still
Okay.
in MERS. I was just randomly connecting with people in MERS only. And it was a mindset like, no, they're my competitor. So for example, Hapag is my competitor. No, no, I'm not connecting with them. Why do I even connect with a competitor? Hey, I don't know them. So, and it's the worst thing here in LinkedIn that you one can do. I've done that very successfully, and now
Yeah.
I think I was very unsuccessful in doing that. I shouldn't have done that. I should have connected with a lot of other people, be it competitor, be it
Yeah.
whosoever. I should have connected. That is one part with regards to LinkedIn. The other part is getting to know about all these roles well in advance and transitioning. For example, I went from a logistics then to a vessel performance. I could have had I researched it, I could have easily gone from ship to a vessel performance role. I missed out on that clearly.
Okay.
I had to go to a different genre altogether in between. But now I think because the media is so well versed now, the social media, I think somebody
Yeah.
following properly should be able to justify those gaps that I had in my career. I think these are two major things that I missed out on.
Okay, very, very well put. And I think these advice would be very beneficial for anyone who's listening. And it would definitely, make their transition very smoother. Having said that, you were a mariner, and once a mariner is always, they are always a mariner at heart, no matter what happens. So, what are those habits from your seafaring days which you feel are really helping you, not just stand out, but build a better career ashore? Because you are adapting to different kind of roles from now on, because you have transitioned to three different segments of jobs altogether, being a mariner. And that shows that you have something in you, and it must be something coming from your seafaring days. So what exactly could you define it to be?
I think adaptability is the very first point that one should keep in mind while coming ashore because every day, as they say, when you are a seafarer, every day is a new day,
Yeah.
and a new day comes with a lot of different challenges. Let me put it very clearly in corporate as well. Every new day is a very big challenge and a very big opportunity as well.
Yes.
Depends on how a person is seeing it. If the person is
Yeah.
seeing it as an opportunity, it will be an opportunity. If you're
Yeah.
seeing it as a challenge, probably
Yeah.
that person is gonna get stuck somewhere. The one thing that always stayed with me from my seafaring days was adaptability, and the next part was discipline. Because on board a vessel, you're so disciplined, and I keep talking about these things from my previous experience from my pre-sea days when you get up at probably four or here in India, I'm speaking about you get up at 4 or 5 in the morning to do these PT, jogging and exercising. I think these are very small things, but this goes a long way in your career to make sure that you are disciplined enough to, if you have a timeline, please try and respect that. On board a ship, you will have to do it. When you are in corporate, you will be forced to do it because it has repercussions on a lot of things. One planned deadline is missed, 10 other deadlines will be missed. So discipline is the most important thing. Apart from adaptability, is what I have been carrying forward from my seafaring days.
And very well said. These two qualities, I think, definitely will make you succeed in your career wherever you are, even you are ashore or you are on board. These two things, qualities, definitely will help you move forward. And going forward, what do you think is the role of having the right mentors? And how do you choose a mentor? And how does someone, because I'm sure when you are ashore or even when you are on board, you must be having some mentors who would have guided you in your ship to shore journey, or after you transition there might be someone who would be, you would be seeking advice on any other things, like I'm stuck here, I don't know what to do. So how does one choose their mentors rightly, and how big does this will play in their transition?
And I think very valid question, Sachin, because I still remember my pre-C days. You all of a sudden, all of us went from a school environment to a college
Yeah.
environment, a residential college environment, and you have seniors, you have juniors, everything. But having said that, you still find out that group with whom you are very comfortable with, and also a bunch of seniors whom you know that they're always there for you no matter what, and those people make you understand things which you have never heard of probably. So this comes from the PC days, and then the moment you go on board, you all would always like what happened with me. I knew I had a third mate or a second mate and a chief mate, of course. Eventually, a chief mate would be there for a deck office, a deck cadet always. I think inquisitiveness is the biggest thing. You got to try and learn from these people a lot. That is what I feel. In terms of mentor, I think what best suits you. A certain set of people that you have on board. Of course, if you are smart enough, you know within a month's time who is what knowledgeable basis the criterias, and you would get to understand with whom am I more comfortable. So, for example, there is an officer with whom you are comfortable in asking so many questions. Um, Try and stick with that person. If that person is technically correct, you have a Jambo person to help you. In terms of shore, I think shore opportunities, the moment you connect with a lot of people over LinkedIn, you would eventually understand that there are only a handful whom you can really trust, given their experience and everything, and try to have a very heart-to-heart conversation with that person, especially when you're trying to come on a show, because having these conversations really help a long way. Because otherwise, a formal communication would always be like, "Hey, yes, vessel performance is very good. Yes, I mean, surely you can come. It's a very good team." But eventually, if you have that, if you build up that rapport with a
Yeah.
person who is walking somewhere here ashore, I mean, eventually that person will spill the bean and he would tell you, "Oh, don't come here. Please go there. There's an opening there. Please go there. That's much better." So I'm not disregarding anyone, but
Yeah.
having the right person is a very big key to how your transition.
Very, very, very rightly put. And I'm sure anyone who listens to this conversation will definitely get to know about what kind of roles are available specifically in these three different segments, and what can they, avoid not to, slow up their journey. Because I think you can always, the more you keep on searching about roles and different kind of career aspects, the more you can grow. But it also depends on what you want from life. It's not that you have to do it. It's also that important that if anyone sees someone's career show, they should think that this person, it's not necessary that they want to do it. So you don't have to necessarily be chasing everything. So it totally depends on a person's different journey. Everyone's journey is different. Some became third officers after, first attempt of their orals, and some became after 1 year, but everyone sailed through every different ships, and it the journey will differently be written for everyone, and that's where you have to think about when you're transitioning ashore. So, is there anything which you would like to highlight, which you think anyone who is trying to move ashore would should really think of, apart from what you have already said?
I think we have had a lot of ship to shore transition. If somebody hears all this our podcast, I think I am afraid people would a lot of people would try and come back ashore. I mean, that is one part that I do not want people. So my basic idea is, if you really think from your heart that you really need to transition, only then make the transition, because there are challenges here as well. The
Yes.
grass is, as I always say, the grass is always greener on the other
Yeah.
side. There are a lot of things here which are, just like you said, the pipeline structure and the pyramidical structure here in the corporate setup. It's very different. People, and I've seen people as good as chief officers coming for a role, working for a week, and then eventually leaving
Yeah.
because they're like,
Yeah.
no, we can't, I can't deal with this 24/7 what you're doing. So just make sure that you do a lot of thorough research. Obviously, people are there to help you. You have a lot of content creators on LinkedIn who can help you. But eventually, it's on you. Do not think or do not take somebody's career trajectory as a path and just try and do that with yourself. No, that doesn't happen with life. You got to build your own trajectory. Everybody has their own trajectories, like how you said. Somebody cleared third mate in first attempt. Somebody took even 5 attempts probably, but now eventually we're all even like that. I think it's something that is very close to your heart, because even seafaring, I still think of my days when I was on board. I still think of those sunrise and sunset. I can't forget all those sunsets that I've seen eventually, and all those small lonely islands that I've seen on the way probably to Japan or something. So I keep remembering all those things, but then you got to give away something to get something better,
Yeah.
or vice versa. If somebody is on board, probably they're thinking like, oh, it's very monotonous here and I want to get back. There are a lot of challenges here. Please do a thorough research before you eventually try and even think of trying to come ashore.
Yeah, very well said. Because anyone who comes ashore, they always think that, now I'll have a lot of good family and quality time. I will have very enjoyable life. The workload is nothing, and life ashore is very chill. They tend to forget that if someone is paying you something, they make sure that you are doing the work for that. And that very well said. So, following up on that, I would really like to ask: were there any misconceptions you had of working ashore which got busted as soon as you moved ashore?
One of them was like how you said, corporate people do not have any idea on board what is happening.
Yeah,
Who are these people? And we used to think, and I personally used to think, who is this operator? Who's this person always calling us and emailing us? You
yeah,
go this, you go like that. Do not do this, do not do that. Now we think eventually, oh, they're very right, and this is what exactly I've been doing. If my vessel is not maintaining a perfect RPM, I reach out to the master saying that, hey, sir, I give you a so and so RPM. You are way beyond or way above my RPM. What is happening? So, just an example. So now I
yeah,
get to understand how delicate things are. No, nobody is to be blamed here. It's
yeah.
all, everybody is doing their job. The people on board, I have massive respect because I've been there, done that, everything. I know what it feels like when you're on board, and I also now feel, I know and feel what it means to be sure people do not know anything. कुछ नहीं पता इनको तो कुछ नहीं पता है पता नहीं मेल क्यों करते रहते हैं. We people here know everything because they are qualified masters, seasoned masters, sitting in the office knowing what happens when a vessel is going, you know, uh, probably inside a TRS or is going in a path where there's a depression happening, eventually that will turn into a cyclone. People here do that as well, like how you're doing on board. The only thing is you are facing it, we are not facing it. But we are facing the heat. We are not facing the weather. We are facing the heat from our higher authority.
That's really, really well put. And there are other misconceptions which different people will have, which will get busted once they move ashore. And everyone has their own set of myths. Well, it was really lovely talking to you. And I think anyone who listens to this conversation will be able to better plan their journey. And I really appreciate you for doing this and taking out your time on a Sunday, and that too a working Sunday for you. For people who think Sundays are off, it's not. He is working on a Sunday and he just finished his work, and we just had this conversation after his work. So really thankful for doing this, and hopefully people might find some value out of it, and we are able to change and help one seafarer's journey from ship to shore. Very thankful.
I think thank you first of all for setting this up because
Yeah.
not many people try and do this in our industry nowadays. And specifically, we are trying to collate these people's journeys who have been in the corporate sector for a long run is really thoughtful, and I'm very thankful to you for providing this opportunity. This is the first of this kind that I've been doing. I've had n number of all these informal conversations with a lot of people over phone, over WhatsApp, over email. But I think this is a great platform for somebody who wants to not just transition. I think even if a person is having a second thought, I think it's a very good platform to. It's a very good podcast to even hear and listen and what exactly goes in and
Yeah.
around here.
I think it will. My intention is just to, be able to, if you are on your watch or you are on the, in your cabin sitting at midnight or thinking of what to do, just put this podcast on. Think about, what kind of career options are there and what you can look into, and you can create your own LinkedIn profile and start searching for those kind of profiles, because that will give you a brief idea of what roles are there, what people have done, and it'll better help to get connected with the right people. So thank you again. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much.